Hey beloved, this is Krista Pettiford. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that is kind of personal to me, and I hope that it brings value to you. And the subject of this message is resting or sitting in your singleness. It's only for a season. So before I get started, I want to ask you to subscribe to my channel and to like this video if it blesses you, and share it with other people. Sitting in your singleness. So many of you guys don't know my whole backstory, and I'm not going to get into it tonight. This message won't be long, but I just want to encourage someone as I encourage myself, as the Spirit of the Lord encouraged me, and I encourage myself. So I had been married since I dated my ex when I was 20, and then we got married after we had 2 children. I already had 2 in that order. I was not saved, and then I got radically saved when my youngest child, who is now 22, was born, right after she was born. So she is 22, she'll be 23 in August, and I will be 23 years old in the Lord in October. No, excuse me, in November. And so anyway, that being said, I was with my ex-husband for a very long time, loved him. We split up. I had a prophetic word that we were going to come back together. So I waited for him for quite some time. And then things didn't work out. That's the short story. There were different things involved. I don't think that the Spirit of the Lord missed it, or that I missed hearing what God said, but if you know anything about prophecy and the promises of God, there is some divine providence that things are going to happen with or without you. They are set in stone, and then there are other things that are conditional, that are based on the people that are involved and our parts that we play in them. So that being said, he chose another route, and I'm not here to blame, but to say, but for the longest time, up until maybe 2017, my heart was still invested in him, even after the divorce, because I had heard from God. I believed God, and I was standing in the gap for my marriage. He knew this, but eventually he had a child and ended up being with this other woman. And I took that really hard, but there came a point where I said I was done with that relationship. I was done with the emotional abuse and the betrayals and all these things, because through all of this, we were really close friends. We spent a lot of time together. We went on vacations together. We did all this. And so in my mind, there was hope, and we were going to get back together. There was hope for us to get back together, and I would have waited for him through any and everything. But after having the baby and the way it went down, then my heart first hardened, and then I had to walk through a season of forgiveness. But I also knew that I did not want to be involved in a relationship with this person who could do certain things like this to me. And I thought we were better than that, really, even as friends, because we chose a friendship after marriage, and we spent time together all the time. We talked all the time. And anyway, so that being said, as soon as I said that I was done with that relationship, I met someone else who was a sweet guy, who was very tender with me, who reminded me what it felt like to be loved. And so I went into a relationship where he immediately started talking about getting married and all these things. And I knew that I wasn't yet ready to commit. And then the Lord spoke to me and said, this is not the person I have for you. It doesn't mean that he's not a good guy. Doesn't mean that he's not right for someone, but the Lord plans our steps. And there were things that allowed us both to see that that was true. And that was hard, letting him go, because he filled a void. But what I realized looking back is that I didn't put enough time. Like, I didn't have a single season. So even though my ex-husband was gone, he was gone, but we were friends, but I was holding on to this hope, as many women do. And so I was in the season of, in my heart, I was still married. In my heart, I was not single. I didn't date anybody else. I didn't entertain dating anybody else, all these things. So I was still with him. And so I went from him to someone else, and I didn't give my heart time to heal, even though if you looked at it from the outside, I had been divorced for a while, and I had every right to date, but I hadn't. So I had not given myself that time. Therefore, when I got with this other person, he filled the void and filled the need of having that love muscle or that thing to connect to, that person to connect to. Even when my ex was, doing things I didn't agree with or anything like that, I still had somebody to connect my feelings and my emotions to. So what I realized is that even though I was divorced, because I hadn't really let him go, I was not ever fully single. And then I went into this relationship. So after dealing with myself and making the hard decision to obey God and to let this person go who, wanted to marry me, and there was all the why God, why, but I ended it to obey God, and I'm glad that I did, because I didn't have peace. I felt good about him. I loved him. I hadn't had a relationship in a long time, but I had no peace because I knew that I had heard from God. And so I haven't tried to get back together and say, maybe, I heard God wrong, or this wasn't the time. Maybe I heard it, it was for that time, but now he's worked out some things. So maybe God means I could be with him now. But there was just no peace. Not that I didn't love him or care about him or couldn't imagine having a life together, but this is just what I went through. This is where God was leading me. And what I realized after having to let him go, and it's still kind of tender, but that it's a single season where I just need to rest in that. So I don't know what season you're in, and maybe you're not single. Maybe you just need to rest in something that you haven't fully allowed God to fill a space in your heart, where you had something else for so long and you went from one thing to the next without even knowing it. Because in my mind, I was divorced. And so I, hadn't been with anybody other than my ex-husband, and I, no dating, anything. And then I met somebody, so it felt like I finally met somebody, but really I had just finished, said I was done. There was no more praying, there was no more waiting. And then 2 months later, I meet somebody and immediately begin to get into a serious relationship. And that might be what some people do, but for me, it's just a season after going through that I just need to sit here. I just need to sit here with God. And some people go from relationship to relationship to relationship. And while that was not ever really me, when I was younger, BC, before Christ, we would, the one way to get over one man is to go on to the next. Now, I didn't see that in this way. I didn't date after me and my ex-husband broke up for a decade or so, but I wasn't really over him, is what I'm thinking. And I wasn't dating this next person because to get over my ex-husband, but I still, looking back, see that there is power in embracing your single season. There's power in embracing it and letting God heal you in certain places and just minister to you. And so I know that it's kind of cliche that everybody says embrace your singleness, or they're take yourself to dinner or blah blah blah, all these different things. I don't know if it's so much about that for me. I do want to be married one day. Again, I want to be married. I want to enjoy a relationship and have love, but I just think that sometimes we just need to sit in a place and let God lead us out. Let God, he who finds a wife finds a good thing, and she's a crown to his head. And so sometimes when you stop looking and you just let God begin to minister to you, sometimes he turns it around and says, okay, now it's time to be found and crowned. Now it's time for that person to find you, instead of you as a woman looking. And even though I wasn't looking and a man found me last time, the first thing that I did when I was in the world 20 something years ago is to go back out there. And now that my heart is really single, because my heart was tied to my ex-husband for so long, and then my heart began to be tied to someone else, but I didn't give God the time. And so now in this season, I'm not looking to be tied to anybody, but I am looking to be found by the right person at the right time. So I hope this bless you if you're in a single season, and that's a little bit more about my life without going too deep. And but I just wanted to minister to you because I feel like it. I feel like someone needs to just rest in your single season, especially if you haven't, if you are not used to being single. If you are used to having someone in your life, just stop. And what do I mean by rest? Or sit down, sit and just sit in it. Not only embrace it, but just stop trying to go and find and do and just rest a while. And maybe this is not for you. Maybe you've been so single so long and this is not what you're called to do. Maybe you are looking for a husband or a wife and you haven't found the right one, and you need to actively pursue what you want and what God says you can have, and be open to dating. But for some of us, we just need to rest and sit down in it and just not try and get out of it, not try and, put something else, but let God begin to minister to us in this season. And even when we're focusing on, I want to find a man, blah, 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 all of that, then that becomes an idol or a focus that we can get fixated on in itself. So just let everything go and just rest in it. Don't try and figure out who your mate is, the future, or all, any of that. And even if you've been like single for a while, but you have been so fixated on your mind and finding somebody, just rest, just embrace it, and just let God begin to minister to you and direct your steps into what He's calling you to do right now. And again, I know it sounds so cliche, and that sounds cliche to me because I had never been here. But now that I'm here, and this is the first time I've been single in 20 something years. Why? Because my heart was for a man that had left, that had divorced me, but I was still connected to him. I was still waiting for him. And then as soon as that ended, I connected with someone else. And that relationship picked up, and it was love, and it was beautiful, and all those things. But I had to back out of it because I didn't want to move too fast, and because God had said He wasn't the right person for me, the one for me. So He does have someone for me, and He has someone for you, but we need to know who it is. And that doesn't mean it has to be some specific person. I think God is more interested when it's not the right person, and He'll say no, just like when you're going in a direction and He says don't go that way, and then you keep going and He doesn't tell you not to go a certain way because you're on the right path. And when you start to veer off the wrong path, then He tells you no, go back this way. And so as you begin to be in your field, and I think too many of us don't ask those questions. I didn't have to ask God that, and I could probably be married or planning a wedding right now. I didn't have to ask God, but I asked God, and it was a hard answer. It was hard to receive His answer, but I had to live with the truth of what I've heard. And so maybe you need to ask God if you need to sit in a single season, or if you're in a relationship before you get married, you need to definitely ask Him that, because sometimes that's the question we don't ask until later. And then if you're not and you're just single, then you need to ask Him if it's a time for you to rest and stop focusing on finding a mate, and let God lead you in a path like He did Ruth, where your Boaz is. I know that, again, that sounds cliche, but when the word comes alive for you, because you're walking in and it's like, okay, I'm about to be blessed in this season, single season.